Welcome on Texas football. Time for the Saturday morning conversation. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. We figured we'd bring you guys some news and notes and thoughts around the 40 acres this morning. Gerry, let's start with some news that we learned yesterday. Emmett Mosley, the wide receiver out of California by way of Stanford, will be out this spring. We learned this yesterday, as will Trevor Gooseby for most of spring. And we think Anthony Smith and Xavier Filsaime will be out. Ryan Wingo, the wide receiver, and Arch Manning are expected back for spring right now. Mosley, Gerry, has had some injury issues. It looks like this one's another serious one where he's going to have to take some time off. But, man, they need him ready for next season. So it's probably for the best that he's going to take the spring off.
Yeah, and look, because that injury happened in the bowl game, too. It happened late in the season, and it required surgery, so it makes perfect sense that he's out the entire spring. We're waiting. Obviously, this list was released by University of Texas a little over a week ago, but we're kind of waiting to say, okay, it would outside of Archie, they said would return for some of spring. Would any of these other five? Well, the shoulder guys are out. But then we're waiting on Wingo, which you broke that news that it's going to be he'll be back for summer spring. Mosley, we were waiting on that, and when you put that out, we put that out this morning that he is not going to be he's out for the entire spring. And I agree with you. I think getting him healthy, I think sometimes just some time off too. I mean, he's had a couple of injury issues. He's missed games each of his first 2 years in college football, so you don't even really know what he can become. So I think that getting him fully healthy, and not that he would have been available for spring after an ankle procedure, is very important here. But again, it's like you pointed out. I mean, last spring Arch didn't have a lot of the guys at spring, his number ones, the first team guys to really work with in the spring, and it's going to be that way again, at least partially. But he's had so much time with Wingo now. I'm not sure how important that really is. But Emmett Mosley would have been great to have some more work with in the spring. Obviously, the work with Cam Coleman in the spring is number one. But there will still be some of that instability in that wide receiver room this spring. And again, probably another reason that Sterling Burkhalter, even though he's not going to be there for spring, I think the injury issues, we talk about running back having all these injury issues, but if you dive into wide receivers a little bit, they have had those too at Texas. I mean, Isaiah Bond missed half the year. Wingo's had a couple of minor injuries. DeAndre Moore knocked out with a concussion. He missed last spring with a toe when he was still at Texas. So there's been some wide receiver issues that have mounted over the last couple of years too. And I think that's why you saw Texas go after another portal wide receiver to cover themselves in case of injury.
Yeah, absolutely. To go along with some of the younger guys that you hope are going to push those guys. All right. You mentioned briefly the other guys and what's going on at Texas this weekend. 2 official visitors on campus. One of them is already signed with the University of Texas, and that's Lawrence Seymour, the offensive lineman out of Western Kentucky. He showed up at Texas on Friday afternoon, taking his official visit. But, of course, he's already signed to the University of Texas. He's going to return to Western Kentucky for this spring and try to graduate from Western Kentucky, and while petitioning the NCAA for a 6th year. The other young man that's on campus is a high school recruit, Gerry, Elijah Ali. Young man out of Southern California, defensive lineman. Rare to have a guy pop up this late these days. That wasn't a highly known recruit, but it's somebody that Texas is going after. What do you know about Elijah Ali, and how did this all come to pass that Texas is recruiting him?
This was kind of by chance. So Will Muschamp, Kitty Baker, and Johnny Nansen were out on the West Coast in California and SoCal making their rounds to the Mater Deis, to St. John Bosco, down to San Diego to see that speedster in the junior class.
They were doing this last week or
early in January, right after that first portal wave. And so I guess some people have been in contact with Johnny Nansen and Kenny Baker saying, hey, man, and it was one of the people close to him. There's a D lineman here that he got suspended due to transfer rules. So I think he played 4 games his senior year. Elijah Ali, 6'4.5", 285, and he's an athlete. And so while they were down there, they made time to go watch the kid that people close to him put on a personal workout for Texas. And Texas went down to watch him work out at a school. And they were kind of like, wow, this guy's got a real chance now. He's athletic. He can bend. He's got great ankle flexion. He's going to be a 310-pound guy, so he's going to pass some of those eye tests of what he can become and how he can be in the SEC. And he had San Diego State was his offer, his best offer at the time. And so Texas showed real interest in him and decided to bring him in this weekend. Does that mean he's absolutely signing with Texas next week? The first Wednesday in February is the original signing day, which doesn't have much puts a dent in anything these days.
But it doesn't have much juice anymore. Yeah.
But this kid, Elijah Ali, is a kid that has a lot of upside, but he has a naturally great frame that's already starting to fill out. And he really impressed Kenny Baker and those guys in that workout. And Texas decided to bring him on campus. And look, with scholarships going to 105, Bobby, I think oversigning on the D line, if you're an SEC team, has some merit. Because you need to develop your defensive linemen in the SEC. And if you see a big athlete like this, that you say, okay, we can kind of stash and develop this guy for a year. He missed his senior year. There's no expectations of competing early for time. He understands where he's at. His people understand where he's at as a prospect versus a player. Then I think this would make some sense for Texas to bring in a kid like this every year. And it just so happens this one had that special circumstance of suspended due to transfer rules for most of his senior season. So and he transferred before that. So he kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. And he was a later developer in terms of playing football. So there's guys like that can fall through the cracks. But we'll see if Texas makes the big move on him this weekend.
I wrote this on Friday, and I still feel it this morning, is, Gerry, the idea that Texas is uncovering every aspect of the transfer portal, of high school recruiting, it tells me that the personnel department is being thorough.
Yeah.
They're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to get their guys in. They're trying to have a concerted effort that attacks every aspect. And look, I think it's one of the ways, like I wrote on Friday morning, that you go after and create a championship team. Yeah. Leave no stone unturned if at all possible. I feel like they're doing that with that personnel department.
And Bobby, they're still talking to DeMond Lewis too, the edge out of North Carolina, Charlotte area, the younger brother of Damian Lewis, who played on the LSU offensive line at 2019 national championship team and plays in the NFL. DeMond Lewis is a guy that Jeff Banks offered in January of 2025 when they were kind of making the blanket run through North Carolina for the first time at Texas, really offering a lot of kids in that state. Well, DeMond Lewis backed off his FSU commitment, did not sign in January. And Texas is one of the teams that has still been talking to him. So we'll see if possibly Texas looks at an edge guy too as a developmental guy. He's obviously very talented. He was talented enough to pick FSU over South Carolina and Tennessee and some programs like that. And Texas continues to have conversations with him too.
That's a 2026. All right, Gerry, but as we look to 2027, the next recruiting class, I want to say this. Texas has offered 32 kids this month alone. I'm going to ask you to take 4 or 5 of those guys and talk about them in this next segment. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor of the Saturday Morning Conversation, and that is Laura Baker, Realtor Extraordinary, Austin proud. Reach out to Laura if you have any home needs in and around the Austin area. If you're moving to, from, or within the city limits, give Laura a shout, 512-784-0505, or reach out to her, Laura, at andyallenteam.com. She's part of the Keller Williams Realty Group and works for the Andy Allen team there. Again, that is Laura Baker, 512-784-0505. Thank you, Laura, for your help sponsoring On Texas Football. Gerry, I talked about this, but 32 kids get offered in the month of January by Texas. Steve Sarkisian out and about in Metroplex. He was in Louisiana. He's in Houston area. Give me 4 or 5 guys that you want to hit on that are new offers. So some of these guys, they've already been offered, a year ago almost. But what are some of the new guys to really take note of?
Most of these 32 are defensive players at all defensive spots, especially linebacker and DB, and that makes sense with Will Muschamp coming in. This is his first recruiting class, and Blake Gidding coming back as safeties coach. I'm going to leave those a few of those guys for last. I'm going to start on the offensive side of the ball because Thursday, Texas offered 2 Miami commits in South Florida. When I found that pretty interesting. Amari Stevens, a wide receiver at Chaminade Madonna, our favorite out-of-state school here at OTF because of how it sounds when you say it. Amari Stevens is a friend and teammate of Derek Cooper, the Texas freshman running back. Does that mean anything in the NIL day and age? Not really, but it can help you get in the door. And so Texas offered him. He's a wide receiver, also plays some corner, big-time playmaker. Been committed to Miami for a while. Texas offers him. And that's something when you go into South Florida and offer Miami commitments now. And then the other one is DeMarcus DeRoche, not a name I was truly familiar with because I hadn't been by Cardinal Gibbons High. Texas hadn't offered any guys there. I'd seen Amari Stevens a little bit at Chaminade Madonna, but practice this year was rained out when I was there. It was a monsoon. But DeMarcus DeRoche at Cardinal Gibbons, the head coach at Cardinal Gibbons is the father of the Texas long snapper that just transferred in out of the portal at New Mexico. DeMarcus DeRoche is a Miami commitment, about 6'4", 210. We do know Texas is looking to take 2 tight ends in the cycle. They have JT Karachi committed. They had Brock Williams in last weekend. But DeMarcus DeRoche out of Cardinal Gibbons, he does play a little edge, but he plays mostly tight end. 2 Miami commitments on offense Texas offered yesterday in South Florida. That's rare. So I wanted to mention that. Then I'm going to go to linebacker because this is where Texas has done a lot of offering and a lot of work. It was Will Muschamp going to see guys. Johnny Nanson's been in Georgia the last couple of days, seeing some of those guys that have been offered. I think, look, Joakim Gouda from South Paulding in Douglasville, Georgia. Texas offered him January 13th. He is an absolute hammer at linebacker. I mean, he will knock your helmet off, and he ain't picking it up for you after he does either. He's going to make you pick it up. But he is blown up in January. And Atlanta is kind of like DFW right now. There's so much talent. Not all these guys are going to – some of these guys are going to hit later in the process because some of these guys develop later. Maybe they become starters as juniors because there was D1 guys in front of them. But Georgia, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Boston College all offered in January. So even Georgia hadn't offered one of the best linebackers in the state in 27 until this month. So Joakim Gouda is one. There's an in-state one that's interesting that was offered. Caleb Haug out of Kingwood High. Kennedy Brown gets all the ranked five-star offensive tackle at Kingwood High, gets all the press and all the oxygen in the room from a recruiting standpoint. But Cade Hogg is interesting because he's a running back linebacker. He's 6'1", 215 pounds. Texas offered him January 28th when Johnny Nanson went by. He's actually visiting Texas today. They may have a few defensive players that have never been on campus before. They try to get on campus.
These are unofficial visits because they're
unofficials, yeah. So Texas offered him January 28th, and he's reciprocating by being on campus today. So, again, 6'1", 215-pound linebacker that also plays running back. There's a North Carolina kid at Garner that I'm really high on that they offer. Arrowson Randall Jr., 6'3", 212, 215 pounds, great range, can really run. Texas offered him January 16th. We'll see if they get him on campus. But his offers this month, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Oregon, Michigan. I can keep going, but that's a pretty good place to stop on a high school prospect in 1 month. He got 5 of the premier offers in the country. But the linebackers, really a number of those guys offered. And I also want to mention a defensive back. They offered a safety from Alabaster Thompson at High in Alabaster, Alabama. They offered a South Carolina commit from Springfield, Effingham County. They've done a lot of work at safety.
Springfield, Illinois.
Springfield, Georgia, Effingham County. They've done a lot of work in Georgia and Alabama in the secondary. They offered a corner at McEachern in Powder Springs, right by Atlanta, an Alabama commit. They've offered a number of kids committed to other either SEC schools, Miami. So they're going after it. But there's also one in-state guy I want to mention at corner. There's a kid, Cameron Roberson at Cypress Springs. Wasn't on the radar prior to this year. He's got some really good tape. He's 6'1", about 185. Texas and Vanderbilt offered him within the last week. Cameron Roberson, I think, is going to be a name to remember because he's kind of popping up after his junior season, after the season ended. But his tape is pretty exciting, to be honest. That he's got a chance.
Interesting. Good stuff, Gerry. I knew there would be a good number of names that at least people could try to get familiar with fairly early in the process. Texas will have some guys on campus today, particularly on the defensive side. Last weekend was the offensive side with the wide receiver, Easton Royal, for example, coming in. Sark was around Dallas, Houston, New Orleans this past week. Anything further on those trips? He can't go on the road next week. It becomes a dead period starting in February, correct?
So Friday ended the days on the road for college staffs. Then some are going to have some kids in this weekend. Texas will have a few defenders in today, tomorrow. But then it goes to dead period on the February 2nd through March 1st. But Sark, Chris Jackson, and Luke had a big school visit on Thursday. They were in Brother Martin in New Orleans to see Easton Royal's mom, and a couple of people close to him after he'd been on campus last weekend. Everything we hear was that visit went extremely well, coming off the weekend 2-day visit to Texas. Does that mean Lane Kiffin's going to throw in the towel, or Florida or Miami's going to throw in the towel? Of course not, because they should be fired if they do on a kid that talented. But Texas feels really good about where they're at with Easton Royal right now, which is good news because it's going to be a battle. The other thing I wanted to mention, A.J. Milwee out seeing quarterbacks. There's a kid, Davin Davidson, out of Sarasota, Cardinal Mooney, who was a first-year starter this year. I think he's going to end up one of the top quarterback prospects in the country in 2027. We'll see if Texas extends an offer. I heard for sure they liked what they saw in person. Georgia, Florida, Miami, FSU, everybody's offered that's seen him this year. He's 6'6", 215, and those are all January offers for him. He throws about 90 off the mound. His uncle is Matt Drews, who was out of Sarasota, signed with Texas in baseball in '93, but then got drafted in the first round with the Yankees. So there's a little Texas connect around the kid. Right now, his top three are Georgia, Florida, and Miami. I was told this afternoon, if Texas offers, they make that a top four. So we'll see where Texas goes at quarterback in 27. That question's still to be answered. They offered Ty Knutson out of Smithson Valley January 17th. They also have continued to look at wonderful Champ Mons, great name, out of Vero Beach, who was the top quarterback in 28. He reclassed to 2027. So they went and looked at two guys in Florida in the last few days.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Gerry, thank you for joining me. We'll have more later today on Texas football. Also, check us out over at ontexasfootball.com. Come join the conversation. Gerry, I appreciate you very much, bud. Also appreciate our producer, Matt Hutchinson. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good weekend. Hook 'em horns.